Hi, our guests today are Steve Trettel and John Seaver, who are the co-chairs for Citizens for Milford. Welcome, guys.
Welcome.
Thank you.
Glad to be here.
Now,
Are you sure?
just about 2 years ago at this time, the casino proposal for Milford was defeated, and Casino Free Milford kept the initials by morphing into Citizens for Milford.
Correct.
And you've been involved in a few activities. What's going on now with the group? What are some of the projects you're working on?
Well, the baseline project is our quarterly meeting open to the public, where we do our best to give the public access to public officials, where they can sit around like we're doing here right now, informally.
And the last one was when you had State Rep John Fernandez and State Senator Ryan Fatton come in.
Exactly.
Really nice forum, by the way.
It was.
Right.
It was much better than we envisioned it was.
Really
gonna be.
good
Yeah,
questions
really good
until the
questions.
last half hour.
Yeah.
Yes.
No offense, then the nuts took over and the
Right. And then the other thing, the main thing that we do, in addition to those public meetings for citizens, is the forums or the debates between candidates.
right.
You probably remember Senator Moore and candidate Fatman a year ago, and then we've had selectmen debates for this, and actually all the town in Milford, all the town officials. So we've done several of those
And
as
you're
well.
looking at ways of making the town meeting process get better.
Yes, that's a very large project. It's going to be, I'm guessing, over a year before we come back with some recommendations. But that committee is not a CFM committee.
No, that's actually a independent committee.
Yes, it's an independent committee. We went before the selectmen and asked their blessing for the idea, and unanimously they approved it. The selectmen will appoint 3 members to that committee. Then there'll be 1 town meeting member from each precinct.
Okay.
Okay, and
Does
then
that include at large?
yes, it includes
Okay,
that
so
large.
that's 8 and 3. That's 11.
Yep, and then 3 from CFM,
Makes 14.
14
I
people.
thought it was 15.
And the plan is to come up with a new mechanism or a new model, or?
Well, no, we don't want to reinvent the wheel, but there are many ways to improve the town meeting, make it more efficient, make it more acceptable to the town meeting members.
Yeah, like some towns like Brookline have a pre-town meeting where people can go and get informed. I know you guys are also talking about investigating the vote clickers.
Yes,
So instead of everybody, a lot of people don't like to stick their hand up. And then you get an automatic count instead of the town clerk and the moderator sitting there with their pens double checking each other, the score's on a board
exactly, immediately.
immediately.
And
In a past life, I actually had a version of that where we would sit and get a panel of people watching a political debate,
Yep.
and they would have a dial to turn favorable or unfavorable to what the candidate said, and you could overlay that to the candidate's answer and see how people believed them or didn't believe them.
Oh, they do that now?
Interesting.
They're
Yeah, they
doing
do
it.
that now in the national elections, but this originated about 10 years ago. I helped pilot that up in New Hampshire, but I
Well,
like personally, I hope you guys do the electronic voting because
well, that's one aspect. There are many other aspects too.
time limits on speakers.
You're stealing on the thunder. But
No
that's,
offense to your relative, but you did have
I'm
someone-
actually not in favor of, I mean, the last time I checked, America is about free speech. And if anything that goes on at town meeting, there's not enough opposition. I mean, most things just pass, everybody, 100% unanimous and so forth. So any attempt.
My own feeling is, both Al and I are in a town with open town meetings.
Yeah.
You have a representative town meeting like Framingham and Brookline, which is different. You have people elected to go. We're in towns where anybody can stand up who's a voter and say anything they want, or get recognized to speak if they're not a voter.
Right.
And you guys actually have it a little more controlled than we do. But, personally, I agree with you. If somebody can stand up and make an argument for 2 hours,
Look,
God bless them.
it's a free country. It's
Yeah.
about free speech. On the Senate, you can do filibusters that go on 24, 48 hours or whatever.
Yeah.
So I'm not for limiting speech.
Right.
I'm actually for expanding it.
The danger of that, though, is you lose the audience.
I don't agree with John, by the way.
Well,
on that
what I'm
aspect.
saying is...
That's a nice thing
well,
about free speech.
Yeah.
But let me explain my point of view as a former moderator in a neighboring town. You have to balance that wish to let everybody go everything with the fact that not everybody wants to sit there till midnight. Long speeches tend to lose the audience
And tend to get off theme.
and tend to get off theme. The towns that do limit usually say something like you have a 5-minute limit or a 10-minute limit
Yep.
or a 50-minute limit. My own practice was, and I'll give you an example, let's go back to the Woodland School where we had someone speak for a long time. Had I been the moderator, I would have said, the proponents took exactly 35 minutes, which is what they took. You're at 30 minutes, wrap it up. You're getting equal time. If you can't make your point in 35 minutes, see, that's where I agree with you. People's attention span today is limited. Much as I, think you should argue till the cows come home, you're losing the people's attention span.
Well, here's the
there's-
dilemma. Here's the dilemma with that. The dilemma is that the Constitution doesn't say you have freedom of speech as long as you pay attention. It's not part of the Constitution. The Constitution says you have free speech, which means if you want to talk for 5 minutes or you want to talk for 2
Okay,
hours,
but the courts
you
have also upheld, when you go to moderator school, the courts have upheld the right of towns to pass bylaws
absolutely.
limiting you to X amount of time. The trick is, like some of them say, you can speak once for 3 minutes. That's not long enough. That's 10 sentences.
Well, now we're getting down into the weeds and in the
Yes,
details.
Yeah, well, let's
I
take
mean,
it back
overall-
to a higher level.
Yeah,
Why do you want to
Over-
reform town meeting?
because I am, first of all, I really love town meeting. It's the most basic form of
And it's
democracy.
only in New England, guys, enjoy
And
it.
it's only in New England, and I don't want to see it go away. And it can go away if
Apathy.
people get totally apathetic with it. You can't get town meeting representatives to come to the meetings because of, hour-long speeches. And
It's
so
more than
what
that.
we need to do, it's
Yeah.
more than that, okay? But what we need to do is streamline it, bring it up to date with modern technology, like we do in business, and make it interesting for people. Make people really understand and believe that they have a voice. And the anonymous voting with the electronic voting is one way to do that.
Here's-
But
Limitation
another
of-
thing is,
Yeah.
Limitation-
we
let me
want to
finish,
get information out there
Okay.
so that people show up at town meeting and they're not informed on some
Well,
of the controversial
No
issues.
offense, shame on them. It's their responsibility. You run for office, it's not the town's responsibility to bring you in my opinion, and say, did you read everything you were sent 2 weeks ago?
Yeah, but I think we want to try to improve by sending them information 2 or 3 weeks ahead of time.
Okay.
That
They
would
get
be
that
helpful.
from the FinCom now.
Probably the
Some,
Now, wait a
some,
minute,
some
you had a
things.
point you wanted to make where he cut you off, so,
Well, all I'm saying is, you look at, basically what the committee's gonna do is look at the things that make people not wanna be town meeting members.
right.
Okay? And try to bring it into the modern world of technology, where there's interest, and there's presentation, and it's understandable, okay?
Right. I actually wanna
Getting
tell you a
onto the
story.
presentation kind
Yeah.
of thing, okay? I'm in precinct 3 now, so I'm way in the back.
Yeah.
You can't see all the
You
busy
can hear them now with the
slides.
new with the new sound system. I gotta tell you, I'm 100 feet diagonally from the podium is the press table.
Yeah,
And the old system, the sound was going straight back, not that you could hear it. We'd sit there 100 feet off the side, and we had to figure out some people's words. It
Yeah.
didn't, the sound went
Okay.
forward and
So that's-
died, not
that's-
sideways.
That's a good demonstration.
Now with
of-
the microphones up on the columns, the
improvement.
speakers on the columns, we
Yeah.
can actually hear it.
Yeah,
Yeah, but there's a lot of,
There's a lot of kind of
we're in
details
agreement
like
about
that.
improving access, improving hearing
Yeah.
and stuff. But remember, less than 50% of the town meeting members show up to any town meeting.
Well,
Less than 50%.
We
I think
did
we
publish their
published that.
records.
And then also, the vast, more than a majority of the town meeting members are town employees.
But that's what happens, though, when you have elected
it's-
town meeting members.
Nobody's saying you can't do that. I just think that information needs to be available and accessible and sent out there.
Yes.
That's
Well,
what we would
Yeah,
prefer.
Well, right now, I don't want to toot our horn, but we give pretty in-depth coverage to the town meeting before and after. We're probably the only people left who actually print a record after the meeting of all the votes
Yes.
and what they were. We try to explain them. But I know the Finance Committee has stuck religiously to their at least 2 to 3 weeks before. In fact, because they voted last week on some of the articles, they're putting out a amendment Monday so that people could see their final votes. And I know the selectmen didn't vote till exactly 7 days before the town meeting on their recommendation. Shame on them. But I also believe, though, you're a town meeting member. You ran for it. It's your responsibility to be the best educated person you should be on the articles. When I hear people say, well, I didn't know what I was voting on, then why are you here?
My own personal opinion for an elected official is an elected official has 2 obligations. One, to have an opinion on a question that's asked, and 2, be able to justify that opinion. If your elected official can't do that, then they shouldn't be in the office and they shouldn't have gotten your vote. You have a right to ask anybody you elect for their opinion, and they have an obligation to tell you what that is.
But I did want to give you my own opinion. I covered Milford for the Worcester Telegram, 1979 through 82. Came back in, what year did you start Milford?
Oh gosh, I don't know. It's
97?
yeah, something like that. About 8 years
Okay.
ago.
So, 25-year gap. The difference I see 25 years in the town meetings is the following. More people stood up and talked and questioned in the early 80s than do now.
Yes.
And what I see now is FinCom says yes, the same 5 people get up and ask the questions because some of them like to hear themselves talk and some of them want to question it, so there's some opposition to something. But the same 5 or 6 people get up and things are passed. People tend today, in my opinion only, as an observer for the last 8 years, whatever the FinCom recommends, they do.
Yeah, but let's
Because they think it's vetted by them.
Yes, but it's because, on the one hand, the real issue in Milford, which we're talking about, because we
Yes.
were talking about Mendon
Or Upton.
or other towns that have huge controversial issues around overrides, which really get people going and then they show up. Milford isn't even close to that kind of calculation.
The most controversial issue you've had in the last 5 years, to me, was the conservation easement question of a year or two
Yeah, and that's
ago.
just of Louisa Lake, and that's, yes. But
And the casino.
yes, but
But
all
that
of
never
the
made
other
it, that
issues.
never made a town meeting.
That's right, but all of the other issues,
Yeah.
the Woodland School, or spending on, any kind of public project, it all comes down to, do you have enough money?
Yes.
And Milford does. And why do they? Well, that's a separate question. But it's clear we're not even close to an override. And so therefore, all of that controversy
Never happens.
Never happens. So that's really the problem with Milford. We've got a lot of extra money to do a lot of extra things. So you're not limited.
Well, if
and
you
I think
talk-
that's the problem.
If you talk to the finance
if there was a
people, though,
vote
yes,
on an override in Milford,
it would fail.
you would have the place filled.
There's another issue that's occurred over the years. It's apathy. People and I see it in the town of Upton, for example. The same people show up at town meetings that have showed up for the last 30 or 40 or 50 years. And the reason why is that the younger people, it's being handled by somebody. If there is an issue on the table, they'll show up for that issue
And then leave.
So what's happened is younger people are not engaged in their own government. I'll be willing to bet you that I could walk into your high school and I could ask every student how their government runs, and only 10 out of all of them would know. And that's
And the
that's the
hardest
blame.
thing is, I did a story a year
That's
or
what's
two
happening.
ago where I did the age distribution of town meeting members. And it skews, though, exactly where I think it would. The majority of them are in the 30 to 50, 60 range, which are people raising families.
Yeah.
And
You
my,
have very few at the end, and you have very few.
and my
here.
argument
Nothing
has
wrong
always
with that.
been, and the other thing is affordable housing in Upton and Mendon and those kind of things. And my argument in the bedroom communities is, if you don't try and encourage younger people of the low end of the income spectrum to be involved, then you have an unfavorable balance in the way your government runs in a community.
You have that anyway.
But I would
mean, it's
argue-
not-
yeah.
you know, town employees make up the vast majority, and their families, of our town meeting. And I bet that's probably the case across the Commonwealth.
It's usually, actually, in
And-
most towns with representative town meeting, the majority are teachers.
Right, they're showing up because they have an extra interest.
Right, right.
Which is themselves,
Yeah.
or their politics or whatnot, to
Right.
show up. And most people are, you know, the point in Milford is, we're not gonna have an override, so people aren't gonna get excited, except for an issue like a casino.
Special issue, right.
Like if the water company, for instance, was gonna get purchased or not. as
That-
an
that-
example. That will bring people out.
That's one where Jerry Moody said he expects to have that wrapped up, one way or another, by the time of the spring 2016 town meeting.
Yeah.
He said that to the Finance Committee recently. One way or another, if you want to pursue it or not, they'll know. Because they're having frank negotiations with the water company. One way or another, he'll know.
Yeah, it's true. But I guess.
And then he has to demonstrate, by the way, his grand scheme of, we can pay for all the borrowing out of the current rate structure, so you're not paying more money.
Well, there's an enterprise that has to be set up, there's all kinds of things.
They know that,
Yeah,
but
it's a
that's not what people are gonna vote on, whether or not there's
It's
an
a
enterprise fund.
complicated
Right.
decision
I
Absolutely.
for a
like
variety
to
of
go
matters.
back, I'd like to go back to what the issue you raised. Younger people are not
Absolutely.
engaged and involved, okay? That's one of the reasons why we took this on.
Yeah.
Okay? Streamline it, bring it into the 21st century. Use, really use of technology, and I think younger people will respond.
Here's the problem, and something has to be done.
They're not gonna
I'm
respond
excited-
to an
I'm
archaic
excited that
process.
you guys are jumping in that fray, because I think that's a critical issue. But here's my concern. My concern is, you can take the information to that person, but if they don't understand the process and the information itself and what impact it has, then they can't make a decision. When you went to school, and you went to school, and you went to school, and I went to school, we had to take a course in government. Government was required to graduate,
Yes, it was.
Yeah,
and today it's not.
right. I mean, my view is that young people only get engaged once they get married, buy property,
Pay taxes.
pay taxes, and put down. Up until then, you're in your early 20s, you have other priorities.
And other
So
peop-
I
and
wouldn't be
Other
trying to-
people are taking care of that.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
But I still,
as
like-
you
I don't see a
mature.
lot of in the 20s, but we'd like to see a lot in the 30s.
and the
Well,
thing-
I'll
but the
tell you
dilemma-
what's also missing, by the way, in addition to the age spread, and this is controversial to say, I don't see the demographics of Milford
represented.
clearly represented in the town meeting. And I'll say it right out. I don't see enough of, I would say, people who immigrated in the last, not the last decade, but the 2 decades before that, or 3 decades before that. I don't see a lot of diversity in the town meeting from people who have been here 20 or 30 years. I see a mostly white, middle-class town meeting.
Yeah. Well, it's probably because the people you're talking about are poor and are working hard, raising families. I mean, they're struggling, so they can't be, you know, they can't get involved in
Yeah.
democracy.
Although they
because
are
Because
citizens.
they're struggling
Yeah.
paying their bills.
And
That's the problem.
And to that issue, that has to be one of the things that's on the table, on how do you make time or get those people engaged and involved? Because, in point of fact, that's the future.
Yeah,
You know, that's the future of government in Milford and in every other community, is that 30 to 40-year-old who's struggling. Eventually, they're going to be the guys running the government.
Yeah.
And we need to make sure they're engaged, so when they get to be in a position like we are, that understands the nuances and the politics and all that stuff, that they understand it also. That's the critical path that we've
and
missed.
here's why.
So you've outlined the problem. What's the solution?
Well, if I knew the solution, I wouldn't be sitting here.
But here's an interesting thing. To Al's point, and your point. I was sitting in a Department of Revenue 4-day course in August at UMass with brand-new elected assessors, either people hired as the principal assessor or elected Board of Assessors. The first day, we get asked a question by the teacher from the Department of Revenue. What is the single largest factor responsible for, where does the single largest factor responsible for the majority of your tax rate get decided? Hands go in the room. Nobody got it right except me. Town meeting, voting on the annual budget.
You betcha, that's the purse.
So that's the attraction
Power
to
of the
me,
purse.
is you want to get people to go to town meeting. It's real simple. Do you like your tax bill? Do you care if it goes up?
Yeah,
You
but
get,
let's,
you get to be a town meeting member. You get to decide.
of course, but here's the issue with that. Milford's taxes to the residents, in a relative sense, are cheap.
Well, because they're
the-
artificially
Well,
lowered.
It's not artificial, that's a
No,
policy.
no.
Hang on. It's
Your
a-
tax bill is lowered by 50%
Yeah, that's
by
a-
that shift to the business. You crucified
That's
the
a
business
policy
community in
decision.
Milford.
Because we have a strong commercial base, we can increase the taxes to them,
Well,
which, and consequently decrease it to the residents.
Well, and here's my question.
So it's a great deal for
No.
the residents.
When people complained
It's not a great deal for business.
15, 20 years ago, whenever the split tax rate was in, you had the tax bills climbing up to the $7,000, $8,000 range. Everybody dumped on the Board of Selectmen, and they used the Fortune Boulevard and all that nice commerce to shift the tax rate.
That was 20 years ago, Kevin.
Okay, what's the town gonna do as the bills creep up the next time? You got nowhere to go. Your bills are gonna get back to that $7,000, $8,000 range
Yeah, they're bound to do that.
eventually. They have to, by spending habits.
Yeah, but
Where
gotta
are you
look
gonna
at
go then?
Our taxes, our residential tax rate
Is low.
is low.
Yes.
Compared to it's half what Holliston pays. Hopkinton, these towns, because they have no commercial base
That's
to
correct.
speak of.
Hey, I'm from Mendon, I got
You
nothing.
know, and Mendon is the same.
I got 3 car dealerships and a car wash.
Then you gave him a deal, too, so he doesn't pay what he may have otherwise.
Yes, he does. We didn't give him a deal.
I thought he got a year
No.
delay.
No, he got nothing.
Okay, all right, I stand
We
corrected.
have one TIF agreement,
With, okay,
not with Kevin, with a manufacturing
Mendon.
company.
that's Mendon, but we're talking about Milford. So Milford taxpayers
So
have
they-
actually a good deal in
You
their
do.
taxes.
No,
And
without
that's
question.
yet another problem why they may not be interested in getting involved, because it's a good deal.
It's not a good deal for everybody, though. You got the lower limits and you got the upper limits.
It's not
Getting
that's
pitched.
not a motivator to bring business into a community.
No, it's
But-
not,
but-
but the irony is, business continues to come to Milford
Yeah.
in spite of these crazy taxes.
Well, it comes to
Because the
Milford 'cause of
bedrooms,
495.
Communities surrounding us don't want businesses
Yeah.
in
It
there.
comes to Milford because you've got water,
Yes, that's
sewer, and
correct.
2 exits on 495.
Yeah, those are all natural benefits that
So
Milford
do,
has.
so do some of the other communities. Well, why don't they have business? Because they don't want business.
Some
Okay,
towns
they want
don't.
it to be a bedroom community.
Well,
You know
or
what
a
the
bedroom.
problem with all of
Bedroom,
those
yeah.
is? They're gonna get killed under 2.5 without, the more people you add, the more your school system gets filled. You know, it's a well-known fact. School kids cost more than people paying taxes. For every school kid you add, a town loses money unless it has commercial growth to offset that.
Yeah.
Right. The biggest
That's right.
threat, if EMC gets taken over by Dell.
They
which
are.
is- Which is which is
Yeah.
happening. In a year from now, if they start losing the jobs, those
Mm-hmm.
high-paying EMC jobs, that fund all those expensive homes in Hopkinton and in Milford and in
It's
Westboro.
no different than
And
Draper's
Upton.
closing in
It's
1980.
going to have a major negative effect on the area, including Milford.
It's no different than when
It'll have
Draper's
it.
closed in 1980.
It'll have a dramatic, it will have, you're absolutely
It'll
correct.
have a negative
Now,
effect.
it may not be today, it may not be a year from today, it may not be 2 years from today, but believe me when I say if Dell does take them over, they're going to centralize management. They're going to, the duplication of effort is going to be reduced and eliminated, and that's exactly what's going to
Hey, I
happen.
got I got a ton of
Our
friends
values of
who's
our
ju-
homes
yeah.
are going to go down.
I got a ton of friends working there in positions that if Dell takes over, all of them, because they're gonna pick the guys from Texas over the guys from here. That's what
course.
happens in a
Yeah,
merger.
it's a
The
ne-
win-
it's a-
The buyer
Yep.
gets to knock out the buyee. It's
a
like to the
negative
victor
for
belongs to
Massachusetts,
spoils.
and it's a real negative for Metro West,
Oh,
which
for
is
this
Milford
area.
and mostly Hopkinton.
And
Hopkinton
you know why the merger took place? Because the guys in the hedge funds buying EAC stock wanted a greater return.
Which brings me to another issue, which we won't
But
talk
anyway,
about.
okay,
That's another one.
we got a couple of minutes left. We're going around to the town meeting.
Yeah.
We all agree it needs some reforming for whatever reasons. When do you think the committee will be done? You said at least a year?
Yeah.
Longer?
No, about a year.
Okay.
Well, that's exciting. I think this is
Um,
really exciting.
You guys are doing the annual beautification cleanup day again?
Yes, we are.
Is that going to become a truly annual event in the
Yep.
spring?
Yep,
Yeah.
truly annual, that and the quarterly meetings.
Quarterly
Yeah.
meetings,
And we're,
Yeah.
and the
And the
first
debates.
responder,
first responder day?
recognition
We're
day.
looking into that.
That we had a fantastic, the businesses and the selectmen and the schools, they had rallies across town.
I saw on your website you have all the signs
Yes.
posted.
So next fall, we'll try to even expand that, so that's something that we're
Okay.
looking at.
Now I'll ask you one that'll make Al happy. President Obama declared a day in March as the Vietnam Era Veterans Day. Little known, it's now going to be celebrated every year. So every other group gets November 11th. People from, what is it, 55, Al? 55 to 65?
Yeah, something like that.
Who served, or 55 to whenever the end of Vietnam. You have your own day too. It's not going to be a federal holiday, but it's a day of recognition. Any thoughts on getting involved in something like that and helping honor the Vietnam guys? The idea is they never got a homecoming.
As a vet of that, of that era, I don't particularly care whether the day is there or not. I'd rather keep the November thing.
Okay. I think the idea was to give you one day because you guys never got thanked coming home, was to give everybody one day where they get
Where'd you
welcome.
serve?
I served in Germany.
Germany.
Yeah.
Well, if you supported any support for Vietnam, either home or abroad, you're part of the celebration.
Sure, I understand
yeah.
that, but I don't think it's necessary.
You don't?
No,
Okay.
I don't. I
Just
don't.
thought I'd ask.
I
'cause
do.
You guys need to.
I think it should be together with all the other armed
Okay.
forces.
I'd like to say, you guys played a major role on that ad hoc committee to bring the new American flags and the sign banners downtown.
Yep.
I know most of that committee, if not all but 2 people, were from Citizens for Milford.
Yeah,
And then you had the highway surveyor, and you
Yep.
had the parking clerk, Liz Fernandez, helping out
Yes.
from the town. The banners look great, the flags look great.
and it's set up to be continued. Okay,
Well, the
it's
nice
not going
thing-
to fall apart in a couple of years.
The nice thing about it, one of the nice things is it's theoretically a non-political
Good
group
thing. It is.
that's trying to bring government to bring the government, push the government out to the people in a forum that will be more pleasant, not so much argumentative and
Yeah.
we'll throw these guys up against a wall and shoot them, but let's bring the effort and let you, the voter, decide on what's going
But
on.
the
By the
idea-
way, you brought up the idea of diversity. CFM is so diverse you wouldn't believe it.
People from all over town, all different
all,
nationalities.
all over the political spectrum.
Yep.
All over town.
That's good.
And,
That's the way it
it's
should be.
good.
And all different
yeah.
viewpoints.
And so we've got on
So-
the docket Congressman Kennedy, we're
Yep.
hoping to come in. And this is more of a sit-down where regular people can come in and ask questions. We've got Kennedy coming in hopefully in January or February. We want to get the 3 selectmen in to a nice roundtable discussion in April or May. We'll do a debate at the local town
Election
election
time.
before that, a couple of weeks before. So we got a
Right.
lot of things in
So-
Well, I got to tell you,
It's an interesting
even
thing
if
on
only-
the CFM
Yeah.
core group, okay? Before we take on a project, decide to take on a project, we vote on it. And
Yep.
if we don't get, 75%?
Yeah.
We don't do it.
Well, I want to point out.
So that's what brings the diversity
You-
into
you
play.
guys have held great forums that give the public an opportunity to come. They're covered by the paper. They're broadcast on cable.
Yep.
So, the question is, you're doing the part. If the people don't want to come, you can't drag them there. But you do have good attendance at these
We do.
events.
We
And
do.
I will tell you again, the last one with John Fernandez and Ryan Fatman, right up until the last 20 minutes when you had more advocacy comments than questions,
Yeah.
you had really good questions, and you got a chance to see if these guys knew what they were talking about. And when people are asking some pretty abstract questions, I expected to hear, well, I don't know about that, I'll get back to you. I was surprised that these guys were right on their game
Yes, they were.
and could answer everything.
I was surprised by the amount of work that they do.
Oh, I'm not. The amount of emails they answer,
Oh, man.
Yeah, huge.
They really work hard.
Right.
they do.
Have you ever tried to get some time with John Fernandez in his office? It's difficult
it
sometimes.
is.
It's
It
very
is.
difficult.
Anyway,
And that's the whole
the
point
little
of this.
beeping we're hearing, guys, is unfortunately we're out of time.
Okay.
So let's do this again in a couple of months, and it's been a good exchange, and we'll go on from there.